You're gonna think I lost my mind. Here is a Dodge that I would buy. Yes, the man who hates Dodge products, right? Well, have I lost my mind? Well, maybe I have. I don't know, I'm getting old, but it is a heavy-duty Cummins turbo diesel. Now, as I said over and over again, I don't think it was such a great idea when Chrysler and Dodge got bought by Fiat. Quality started to go down. They started using Italian diesel engines in some of their stuff. Not in this. Cummins. American 6.7 liter turbo diesel engine. Now granted, you might not need an engine this big and this powerful, but if you do, it's the engine to get. People get them because of their incredible towing capability. This thing's rated to tow 11,890 pounds. Now, that's what it's rated for. You can actually pull quite a bit more. I've seen people pull 20,000 pounds with these things. Now, you're not going to be willing to go on a highway going 80 miles an hour doing that, but it just shows what one of these diesel engines can pull. It's got a 6-speed automatic. Now, yeah, you know, Dodge builds the bodies. The bodies are bodies. The problems that you have when a vehicle is problematic is either the engines go out of the transmission. A great Cummins diesel engine that can last a really long time. That's why if I was going to get a gigantic truck, I would definitely think about getting one of these. Now, it is a diesel. It is a big, heavy diesel, right? So it doesn't matter what he does. He gets 12 miles a gallon. Highway, city, that's what he's going to be getting because they're big, giant monster work trucks. You do not worry about gas mileage if you're going to get a truck like this. Like I said, if you don't need a big giant diesel engine, hey, buy something else because you're getting all that power. If you need that power, runs a landscaping business, needs to pull all kinds of stuff, you're going to get bad gas mileage in any kind of diesel. When you're pulling any kind of weight, you get an engine that powerful. That's just the way it goes. And of course, with landscaping business, well, you're going to be getting in a lot of dirt, so it's also 4x4. And of course, this is a real truck, so it's got a real bed, too. This isn't one of these stupid trucks with a baby bed on it. As a matter of fact, this guy's got 2 of them, and the other one has a 5th wheel in the back for really towing heavy stuff. He can fit a bunch of his crew in here. He's got mixing equipment because he's a musician, too, but you know, they're very spacious. Now, he bought it used with 175,000 miles. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he must be insane buying that thing with that mileage on it, right? Not really. I've seen these things with 500,000 miles on them, and they're still going. And he obviously knew something about vehicles because, you notice, he did not buy a GM diesel pickup truck. Now, I had a customer who did the same thing as him, only instead of buying this Ram Cummins, he bought a GM diesel. The thing got to like 210, it started falling apart. If you want to learn from experience and you're going to buy a used diesel, don't think about buying the GM diesels. You ask anybody who knows diesels, they'll tell you the GMs don't hold up like the other ones do. Now, I mean, let's say you bought it brand new. It just started falling apart till they had 200-something thousand miles. Some guys think, oh, well, that's okay. Well, really, for a diesel truck, that's not okay. Look at all that chrome. It's a classic truck. It isn't all plastic like all the modern ones are. Of course, this is plastic. Well, the bumper's still nice and metal. This is plastic. It's a massive engine. And sure, it's kind of hard to get some of the back parts, but you really don't have to do much to these diesels. So let's start it up, climb up here. I'm getting old. I got to pull myself in. Start her up. Starts right up. Now for a diesel, it's actually pretty quiet. We got the hood open. You don't hear a bunch of horrible rattling noises like you do in a bunch of the Fords. Even though this thing's got 193,903 miles on it. 4-wheel drive systems, all done electronically. Now this guy's a big guy. It's a big truck. Check it out. Look at the space between my head and the roof. That's a long distance. If you're a big guy, hey, you're definitely going to feel comfortable in one of these things. As we put it in reverse, the camera system's not working on this at the moment. This is a serious work truck, and it's got some bash damage from work. Well, such is life. We really don't care. We have eyes. You can see it. Work trucks are going to get dings on them. Now, he bought it with 171,000 miles and basically changed the oil on it. I mean, unlike a lot of the other Chrysler Dodge products, you get a Cummins diesel. They're excellent vehicles. If I was going to get a diesel, I'd want the Cummins diesel because they have such a history of making good engines over the ages. Is this truck gonna make me eat my own words? Well, let's get out the scan tool and find out. So in we go. Close the door so it shuts up. Turn the key on. Nice black and chrome interior. Like you say, the gauges give you all kinds of information. It's doing the auto VIN read. In a work truck, it makes much more sense to have regular upholstery, fabric, not leather. It's going to hold up a lot better when people throw crap over it and just last longer. We found a few faults: radio, passenger door, driver's door. That's all the other stuff's perfectly fine. So we'll start with the BCM that has 3 codes. Lost communication with camera module. We know the camera's not working. Center stop lamp control. License plate lamp control. Well, that's all because the tailgate got hit and stuff's bent and broken in there. If he wants to fix it, go ahead and fix it. If he doesn't care about the backup, he's always pulling the trailer anyways. And that's obvious because it got hit. That has nothing to do with the problem the vehicle had from wearing out. It's just from running into stuff. That's what happens with a work truck. A problem with the video input, well, he doesn't really care. The passenger door module has a code. Door module internal is missing calibration. As in all modern vehicles, it's computer modules all over the place, even working stuff in the door as well as door lock works. Everything else works. Who knows, he bought it used. Maybe at some time it was on a wreck and they didn't reconfigure the module in there. Driver's door module, we'll see what that is. Master switch, front right window switch. Door module internal, missing calibration. I know, that window works. That window works, so who really cares? All the information about how everything runs. There we go. We'll start looking at this data here. On the transfer case of the 4-wheel drive, it's all normal. It's all black data. None of it's red. Check it out. The intelligent battery sensor even shows the state of health of the battery, that it's 76.5% good, the battery. All kinds of data. It's all correct. Everything's complex these days, even the diesels. You gotta have a mechanic who knows what he's doing to mess around with these things. But if you change the oil regularly, you might not have to see a mechanic for any kind of engine work for a long time. Now there's no backup camera, so I'm gonna have to look. Last time I drove a Dodge, I ran the neighbor's mailbox down. So I'll take it a little wider this time. For a big old diesel truck, it isn't all that loud. Yeah, they're not as quiet as gasoline vehicles, but these are nowhere near as loud as the old ones were. Big truck, but it handles perfectly well. Now, it does make a noise when you got the fan on, but that's because there's a piece of leaf or something in there. So we'll turn the fan off. Now the noise is gone. You want to be high and dry up in the air. It's a nice tall truck. Our drag strip, so we'll drive down here and we'll look behind us. There's nobody behind us. Oh, yes, there is. So we'll have to go fast. We'll have to go, and here we go. Now you'll notice one thing. You didn't really hear the shifts, and you don't really feel them. This isn't a race truck, it's a big diesel work truck. It's not particularly fast off the line, like the Hellcat Hemi pickup truck that I drove last year that had 700 horsepower. Now that was insane, but this has pulling power. This is a work truck, it's made. Pulling a lot of weight, not breaking down. It's almost at 200,000 miles. And it's had basically nothing done to it but oil changes. All right, so what's my conclusion? Yeah, he bought it with 170,000 miles. It still runs pretty much like new, and he's just changed the oil in it. And everybody's gonna say, Scotty, you're such a hypocrite. Now you're saying these are great. I'm only saying they're great Dodges because they got Cummins engines. You want a giant truck that pulls a lot of weight, and you don't care about 13 miles a gallon, towing, pulling things all over the place, you might think about one of these 2500 Cummins for heavy duty work. That's what it's made for. It can last many hundreds of thousands of miles. Look at this thing. Almost 200,000 miles. It still runs pretty much like new. Here's the Mazda emblem. But let's open the driver's door and look inside. What does it say here? Manufactured by Ford Motor Company. For Mazda Motor Company. So in other words, this Mazda B3000 is in reality a Ford Ranger pickup truck. Check under the hood. Somebody put one of these dumb cold air intakes on it, but it goes to a V6 engine, which is a Ford Vulcan V6 3.0 liter engine. That's why it's called the B3000. It's a 3-liter engine. Now, it's a very conventional engine. It's V6. It's got cast iron block, cast iron head, push rods, and 2 valves per cylinder. Puts out 140 horsepower, which is enough to move this little pickup truck around, especially since it's got a standard transmission behind the 8-ball here. Now, it's a pretty basic pickup truck. Got a decent bed on it. You can haul a reasonable amount of stuff with it. This one has a decent spray-on liner. So, even though it's getting older, It's solid. You can see the bolts are rusty, but the bed's still in good shape. Now, Ford and Mazda have been collaborating for decades. Some like these, the B3000. It's a Ford Ranger with the Ford engine, a Ford transmission. They just had deals going back and forth. Now, basically being a Ford Ranger, this was manufactured in the United States. If you were buying this and thinking you were getting a Japanese vehicle, no you aren't. You're getting a Ford Ranger. And they can be decent trucks like this one that served its owners well. It's 17 years old, has 198,000 miles on it. And truth be told on this one, the differential here is starting to wear out. It's starting to growl, which is typical when they get that kind of mileage on them. And the owner's probably gonna just drive it until it drops. It might still go quite some time before it finally goes out. Now you could have a full differential rebuild done, which might run you anywhere between $800 and $900 if you want to fix it. Or if you're more of a gambling man or have luck in junkyards. I had a customer a couple of years ago buy a used rear end, the whole thing, for $250 from a junkyard, and the truck he came out of, he said had 15,000 miles, was smashed in, and it worked perfectly fine. Even though it says Mazda, it's a Ford product, so getting parts, there's a lot of them out there, and you got a lot of choices of what you can do. Now, as a used vehicle, these things can be decent. You can get them cheap enough, and they can last a while. But when they were brand new, really, they weren't that much of a deal. To give you an example, the list price of this vehicle was $16,500 when it was new. And at that same time, 2003, you could have picked up a comparable Toyota Tacoma for about $800 less. And yes, the Toyota Tacoma is a much better overall truck in terms of longevity, needing less repairs, a little bit higher technology. But just try finding a good used Toyota Tacoma cheap. That's not an easy thing to do. If you only have a few grand to spend, getting one of these used might be a better idea because you can find them. It's going to cost a lot less than a comparable Tacoma. After all, these are pretty basic vehicles. V6, cast iron block, cast iron head, push rod, simple technology, and they're not bad vehicles. And if you can get one for a cheap enough price used, it can be a great secondary truck for running around with. After all, a small pickup truck is a small pickup truck. They all look the same. They look like small pickup trucks. And you can see, 17 years later, the body's still in excellent shape. Even the fancy rims that it originally came with are still looking pretty good for all that age. Now, of course, having the V6 engine, even though it's a standard transmission, these aren't gas misers. This particular one gets about 17 in the city and 21 on the highway. You don't get great gas mileage with pickup trucks, especially when they're a little bit older. But that's not what you buy pickup trucks for. You buy them to haul stuff. It's got a decent sized bed. With a standard transmission, it's pretty easy to haul reasonably heavy loads. And with that V6 engine and a standard transmission, it can tow 4,000 pounds, so it's got towing capability. All in all, it's a decent little pickup truck, especially if you find a good one used at a decent price. Just realize it's not a Mazda. It's a Ford. It's made by Ford in the United States. So if you were looking at one of these Mazdas and a Ford Ranger pickup truck, realize it's the same thing. You could buy either one, you'd be getting the same vehicle. They didn't make that many of these things. You're going to find out the skinny on them right now. To start out, what's under the hood? Well, it's all covered up with plastic. I wouldn't have done that. This is a Hellcat V8, and you see a big piece under there. That is a gigantic supercharger. And not just any supercharger. It's a 2380cc twin screw supercharger that boosts up to 11 psi. And as you can see over here, puts out 702 horsepower. And this TRX is also a 4x4. Let's just say you're not going to get stuck in the snow. It's got seriously aggressive tire pattern. And you might think, like I do, how could anybody possibly control all that horsepower at high speeds in a thing that's as boxy as a pickup truck? Well, check out the speedometer. What does it end at? It ends at 120 miles an hour. And you might say, how could all that horsepower only go 120 miles an hour? Well, actually, it's electronically limited to 119 miles an hour. They weren't dumb when they made these things. If this thing went full blast in a pickup truck with all that horsepower, things would be spinning over like tops. People would be going way too fast. It's not a race car. See, it's got tons of clearance. Race cars have no clearance at all. They have to be very aerodynamic so they can have the wind pushing them down to keep them on the road. You don't want to be going 200 miles an hour in a pickup truck. Hence, it's electronically limited to 119 miles an hour And that's probably a good thing. Speaking of clearance, there's all kinds of working room inside this thing. It's not like it was hard for them to shoehorn this big Hellcat V8 into a pickup truck body. It's a big pickup truck, so it really doesn't have bad working space at all. Though the engine and supercharger is so beautiful, I don't know about this. I would have put a clear plexiglass one on. Now that's part of the air intake system. It's coming from there, from the scoops. This is not for show. The air gets sucked in here. You want to get 702 horsepower, you need a lot of air. And of course, the supercharger, that rams even more air in. When I had the 2013 Shelby Cobra, it had 667 horsepower in the supercharger. It didn't even have a front grill. It just had a big hole like a shark's mouth, because it had to suck so much air, because it wasn't speed limited, and it went 202 miles an hour. Now, since this is speed limited to 119 miles an hour, this is plenty enough opening to suck enough air in. That's not a problem. They would have needed a much bigger one if they wouldn't have speed limited, but I mean, really. Can you imagine driving 200 miles an hour in a pickup truck? Unless you're at a racetrack going in a straight line, it would not be a smart thing to do. Now, of course, if you're worried about gas mileage, don't buy one of these things. They eat up a lot of gas. The entire vehicle is made for that power. Let's check underneath. All right. Look at the lower control arm. It is thick. It is strong. You look up, it's got the fancy TRX active terrain dynamic strut system on it. Look at the shock. It's a very interesting system, and it is rock solid. Look at the line that fits these Bilstein shocks. Look at it. This is thick. What's this? It's actually bolted on. This isn't some cheap plastic piece of crap like some of them are, where all the power lines come in and they just snap in and it's plastic, eventually it cracks. Braided line. Solid bolts. This thing is solid built. Now, if you've been watching me for any length of time, you know that I am not a Chrysler Dodge Ram fan. This particular truck looks to be an exception to me. And on the TRX, even the four-wheel drive system is fascinating. Okay, you got 702 horsepower. You know what that's going to do to the rear tires? They'd be burnt out all the time. This is always in four-wheel drive. You can go high, low, whatever. There's 4 settings, but it's always in four-wheel drive. You got so much power, you don't have to worry about not having enough power to run four-wheel drive. There's no arguing that. Check it out. There's four-wheel drive automatic, four-wheel drive high, axle lock, so you're stuck in the snow, four-wheel drive low, launch modes. Baby's got technology in it, but the sound, even the graphics are cool. There's nothing quite like a Hellcat V8 engine with supercharger. Yes, it makes noise, but it's a nice noise. It's not overly aggressive like an obnoxious Ferrari backfiring. It's certainly music to my ears. Now, of course, it's a pickup truck, but it's got a full cab. You can easily fit 3 adults in the back. He's got the seat full back. Look at the room. Gigantic moonroof if you want one. Just realized with pickup wars in full flight here, they only made 702 units of the special TRXs, and they were sold in a few hours. And of course, with 702 horsepower, you can tow a lot. This thing's rated at 8,100 pounds, but I'm betting you can tow a lot more than that. It's got one serious military-looking rear end, fancy shocks in the back, too. And of course, if you want to win a pickup war battle, realize you're going to lose the gas mileage. These things get into single digits if you're driving them in town. And if you drive them really hard, I've driven some really hard, and I got like 5 miles a gallon in town. So be prepared to spend money on gas if you want one of these beasts. Realize one thing, this may be the last of the dinosaurs, the last of the great V8 with superchargers, 702 horsepower. And I'm making that many of them, and in the future they probably won't allow people to build things to get gas mileage like that. But if you want to get the last of the dinosaurs, be the last on your block to have the beast, you might think about buying one of these things. With all the modern conveniences, big old screen, you can look all around so we won't hit the lions at the end of the driveway. I particularly like the overhead view. That is so cool. Of course, it's a typical big pickup, especially with a 4x4. You're way high up in the air. And for a pickup truck, of course, it's a modern truck. With all that fancy suspension system by Bilstein, which is the top of the line shock and strut manufacturer, it really handles well for a pickup truck that's four-wheel drive that has a solid rear axle. You can hear that supercharged whine. Just cruising around, it actually has a very comfy ride, I do have to say. They're not like the old pickup trucks that jostle the fillings out of your teeth. So it's off to the country to take it for a spin. Listen to that supercharger whine. They're supposed to do that. Our little road test here. You can see I've been here before. Let's see what this 702 horsepower can do. Here comes the supercharger. I'm totally disappointed, but look, he's got it set on valet setting, so they can't drive it fast. If you own one of these and you're having somebody park it, put it on valet. We're going to take it off that in a second. Look at all this technology. Well, we're going to figure out how to turn it off. All this stuff on and off, but now we want to turn it off. So now we're going to deactivate it. You pick your own code. Now it's deactivated. Now we can have some fun. Here we go with the turn. Speed when you want it, a lot less speed when there's a valet, or perhaps your teenage son wants to drive it around. And if you don't tell him the code, he can't turn the valet off. But if you want to win the pickup battle today, this Hellcat 702 horsepower supercharged Ram, it's at the front of the pack right now. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.